a little bit about 9/11 and
Yes.
and a couple specifics, Building 7 and whatnot. Well, check it out. You know
Okay.
what? I don't care if 9/11 wasn't an inside job. I'm dissatisfied.
Really?
You know what I mean? And I feel people should be dissatisfied too with their government and just with where we are at right now. You know
Why are you dissatisfied?
Why am I dissatisfied? Because
Yeah.
I feel that corporations have gained more. There's unequal protection under the Constitution, and corporations, you know what I mean? These corporate fictions, they're considered natural people, right? So corporations are afforded the same protection under the Constitution that another natural person would be afforded, except for they have billions of dollars and we don't. So who do you think, you know what I mean, is really being represented here? And that dissatisfies me. I'm not satisfied.
And but actually they don't. I mean, like they have limited liabilities and those kind of things. Actually, they have more power than a lot of individual people too. So that I think is, you have to remember the way that they actually set up the corporations in the courts is that they actually make them ultra powerful so that they don't get sued. That's something that they just have to do because of the culture that we live in. My problem right now, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and just a quick point, there's a basic thesis there where you and I disagree, and I'm sure we'll get into that.
I would love to.
But I've been thinking about this lately. You know what? Hell with it. I'll get into that now.
Awesome.
Here's the fundamental difference where you and I disagree is that I believe in chaos. Okay. I don't think that there is anything that is organized, because it can't be, because human beings are selfish. No one, really hardly ever, acts as a team without looking out for their own self-interests. Mm-hmm. And every person in those corporations are, especially actually the people in the corporations, are I shouldn't paint with too broad of a brush, but we could say a lot of them are extremely egotistical and extremely self-centered people that are all two business guys walk into a room, and part of it is one of them is trying to screw the other one over. And that happens even within those corporations. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the idea that these are people that can get together and affect policy doesn't work, because in the paradigm of chaos.
So you're saying that you're there, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
I mean, you're saying that corporations don't affect policy?
They can, but see, the thing is that of course they can affect policy as far as they can actually get things like regulators and whatnot. But there's no overarching thing. Like if you talk about would we say that corporations were involved in the whole 9/11 thing? It's not possible, because if there's a middle manager underneath that would benefit from breaking that story. Even if he has threatened, he could be a multi-millionaire by breaking that story to CBS or whatever, screw over his bosses, so then he can become the new boss because he is the harbinger of truth.
I see what you're saying, but I mean, we do still fundamentally disagree. And we can continue to talk about it, and I'd love to, but that I also want to take as many opportunities as I can to really sort of try and define this thing called Crisis Club. I hope you forgive me for that. But
I understand that, but but about the specific issues is what is do you disagree with my thesis there? That life is chaos. And that nothing is that organized.
I do. I mean, I believe that there is. I don't. I guess no, I don't. I believe in order. I do believe in order. I also believe in I gotta really think of how I word this here.
Well, let me give you some information. The 9/11 attacks were obviously organized by Al Qaeda. Okay, so these are terrorists who have decided to fly planes into buildings. Okay. That's what's happening. Now, what happened is here's something I've always found very interesting, is that only the pilots were the ones that knew that they were flying into buildings that day. The other guys, the muscle guys that were supposed to try to keep everything organized, they didn't know they were dying that day.
Okay.
So even in the Al Qaeda, even in that, because they couldn't get that many people together for that plan. Of course not. You can't get that many people who want to ride a plane into the World Trade Center. They don't want to do that. Only 4 guys. They could only get 4 guys to do it. So that's interesting. So chaos even exists in terrorist organizations.
Well, so do you mean uncertainty? Uncertainty exists.
No, what I mean is that when you've got a situation where, you know, even an attack, okay, you can't get everybody on the same page. Even in Al Qaeda, you can't get everybody on the same page. As a matter of fact, a lot of the people that were in Al Qaeda had a huge problem with the 9/11 attacks because they were like, look, dude, I hate Israel. And now we're going to go after the number one, the biggest military in the world. And they have satellites and they can find me at my house right now. A lot of Al Qaeda members hated that whole thing.
In the individual, I mean, what?
Yeah. Think about how the government works with you have military guys that get the orders, but they're not involved in the discussions. There's classified information. Why do you have classified
it's compartmentalized, just like our own intelligence agencies, I would imagine.
So in a corporation and in those kind of settings, you are not going to get a real conglomeration that can actually do something really, really evil, because if they do something evil, the guys that are trying to get ahead are going to rat out the guys that are doing something evil. It happens
within Al Qaeda.
Well, I'm talking about. No, I apologize.
Okay. Within our own government. Well, I can offer you. Look, on that day, you are aware that on the day of 9/11. There was a drill being done. Mm-hmm. You're aware of this, right?
Yeah, I've been told that was a drill that happens on a regular basis.
Well, there was a drill, so that is the reason why jets were not scrambled. Okay, that's
they thought it was the drill. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the thing is a few months before that, a golf player's Lear jet, his own private jet, went off course, and just as an example, I mean. We can see what really happens when a transponder is turned off. There's also an issue with the transponders being turned off because. I remember Payne Stewart, and actually there was fighter jets that flew. Actually, they got so close to the plane that the fighter jets in Payne Stewart's plane, when they lost cabin pressure, and actually they all froze to death. Almost instantaneously in the plane, and the plane just kind of kept going. And actually, the fighter jets got close to us to the point where they could actually see into the plane. Crazy. But yeah, okay. So, are you familiar with, or how familiar are you with the 7/7 bombing?
7/7 bombing.
Yeah, the 7/7 tube train bombing, and also a bus
in London.
Yes.
Yeah, I know a lot about it.
Okay, well, on that day, there was also another drill being done. And in fact, I'd like to encourage you at some point in time after this, just get on YouTube and look it up. There was apparently some company who was responsible for basically coming up with this drill, right? That this company would imagine or come up with these drills in order to, Well,
I mean, you understand why they would do that in London, though, right?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Do what? Who?
Why they would be drilling that much in London? Because I mean, they've been having this problem a lot longer than most other people.
Well, I really would like for you to check out some links and look into it, because it was. But it doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me at all that they would be drilling a lot in London, especially because they've been having the IRA problems since.
Sure, but the point is that the drill that they were doing, and this is admitted. I mean, this is straight from the horse's mouth on television that day. Later on that day, this man, I wish I hadn't had his name and could give you specifics, but I'll send you the link when we're done here, but he goes through and he admits on national television that the drill that they had imagined for this day just happens to be, exactly what had occurred. That there would be 3 bombs on tube trains, and that there would be a bus, and there's just all these crazy.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
It's just not. It can't be a coincidence. But the idea is that the reason why there are, and the same thing with 9/11, the drills that they were doing were just scarily, uncannily familiar to what happened, and this is why.
You threw away a phrase there. You said it's impossible for it to be a coincidence, because it isn't, because it's intelligence. Keep in mind that the radical Muslim problem in England has actually been something that's been ongoing for a long time. A lot of that has to do with when I lived in Germany. It was going on then, where it was because the Arabs in Europe, and this is true, they are second-class citizens. They are treated as such. A lot of the ways that we treat Mexican Americans in this country is exactly the same way that they treat the Arabs in that country. It's the same thing. They come from really, really horrible countries. They come up to try to find their place in capitalism, and they turn into second-class citizens. And that's been going on for a lot longer than the Mexican situation has been going on here. And the thing is that you have to remember that this is something they think about, because the idea of mass commuter transit being bombed is not new. That's been going on a lot. In Israel, it happens almost to the point where it never makes the news. So that's probably why they were drilling for that specific scenario on that specific day, because, you look at London. London's been the victim of terrorism so many times, it's ridiculous. You look at what went on with the IRA and the troubles with the Northern Irish. You look at what and then you combine that with the fact that they have had this Arab question that has been going on for quite some time in Europe. So obviously it doesn't surprise me at all, because really, if you look at that 7/7 bombing, that is the absolute modus operandi of a lot of those Arab terrorists. That's exactly what they do. They did the same thing in Madrid when they bombed the train. The only thing is that the Spanish didn't exactly, they weren't nearly as recalcitrant to it, or should I say, that's probably the wrong word. They weren't nearly as calloused about it as the people in Europe were, because the people in London, because the people in London have been through it so many times.
The point that I was going to get at is that and I'm not really sure how to put it out there, but a conspiracy theorist would say that the reason why there's always these drills which perfectly parallel the real life event is so that if the hierarchy of whatever organizations, whatever agencies are taking part, then there is no such, you can't foil the plot. Okay? Because, we've just discovered that, 3 Muslims have backpacks and they're going to blow up some tube trains, right? Well, it's a drill, silly.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? So time and time again, you have examples of this. And another thing I want to ask you, are you saying that, because we do have examples all throughout, for thousands of years of history of, Western culture, or, the republics of different Western nations attacking themselves. A false flag event there's precedent there for, when Rome burned, when who was it, Nero, fiddled as Rome burned, and then blamed it on the Christians.
Well, that's a different thing. Nero was a guy that just wasn't paying attention. That was different.
But that happens.
But that's not what actually happened. Nero wasn't blaming it on the Christians. The Christians were basically what are just like any other situation that you have in that's like, we took slaves. That is there. All throughout human history. It wasn't a blame thing. Where the Nero fiddled while Rome burned. That isn't literal. Rome actually stayed around for a lot of years after that, like hundreds of years after that. Nero was just.
Oh yeah. I understand that.
That would be like when people talk about George Bush now, where he ignored the problems. That's what they mean when they're talking about Nero. Rome didn't figuratively burn, and then he blamed it on Christians. It was more like
no, it's an area that burned, a wealthy area, and noble families actually had their land confiscated